Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza.
You gotta say your name. Are we live right now?
Yeah, we are. I didn't say my name. I'm Julian Mush. I'm joined by Daniel D'Souza and Rachel Wilkinson.
Hi.
I just wanted to introduce. I wanted to get you. Maybe I was going to introduce myself last, Dan.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anywho, if you're new to the show, we're going to be recapping The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 11, The Heiress. And we've been recapping all of Season 2 and Season 1, and we'll continue to recap Season 2 until the end of the season. Well, we'll probably just keep doing the whole show until it's over, likely. Anyway, we cover everything small screen Star Wars related, so everything that's happening on television, which is basically where all of Star Wars is happening right now. So it's exciting times, and I hope you enjoy what we're about to talk about, because I certainly enjoyed this episode. It was really, really fun. Dan doesn't think there's anything to talk about this week, but he's about to find out. He's about to find out that that's actually not true. There's actually a lot to talk about, and I can't wait to talk about it. But before we do, I would like to remind everyone to follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, TowerBabble.ca, where you can find everything we do, including our flagship show, the Tower Babble Podcast, where we talk about all the latest in film and television news out there in the world. So let's get into this because I took so many notes, Dan. It's just 10 virtual pages of notes, but it's all bullet points, so it's like a lot of it gets compressed. It's really not 10 actual pages. You know what I'm saying?
That sounds worse that it's 10 pages of bullet point notes.
It's somehow more notes.
More, yeah.
The whole point of bullet points is that you're gonna flesh out the thought, right? So technically that's a longer.
Maybe I didn't. It's just more of a stream of consciousness, you know.
In bullet points. Okay, cool.
Yeah. This episode is written by Jon Favreau, not Con Favreau, which is what I had written down here, and it's directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. Bryce Dallas Howard directed in the season 1, the episode where I can't remember which episode it is. I think it's the first kind of standalone episode. I think it might be 4. Where they go to that planet and he meets Cara Dune for the first time, and they defend those
the little
village from the AT-ST.
Yeah.
So I went back and rewatched that episode recently as a recap for this season. I watched the first season again, and I thought that episode, although I didn't love it at the first time I saw it, I think is actually way better upon rewatch. So I'd recommend people to go rewatch it. And I think Bryce Dallas Howard is actually a much better director than you might think, as someone who's just kind of like, who started as an actress and is just kind of getting into this for the first time.
Well, I mean, her dad's one of the most famous directors in Hollywood.
Sure.
It
just rubs off.
I'm sure they came up at family dinner a couple of times.
What do you think of I mean, yeah, probably. I mean, you can't be around that without picking up something or another. But I think that is interesting. So I thought she did another great job this episode as well. We talk more about the specifics as we go. This episode is only 33 minutes long, which is the shortest of this season and one of the shortest of the show entirely. But lots happens. Like I said before, there's a lot to discuss. So let's get into it. So it starts with a landing sequence. They are limping their way past that gas giant that they mentioned last week, and they're arriving at the watery moon of Trask. The landing guidance system is malfunctioning, so Mando will have to try a manual re-entry. They are also apparently nearly out of fuel. And they're worried they're going to burn up in re-entry. This re-entry sequence is apparently an homage to the movie Apollo 13, which is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard's father, Ron Howard.
Yep.
And directly so. She mentioned that on Twitter, so I think that's a kind of a cool nod. Mando asks the frog lady to help him hold back some sort of lever. And then as this is happening, Amon Calamari with a knitted sweater looks up from the surface. Turns out he's the guy who's going to help fix the ship. But I was watching this episode live, and I thought, that's a cool sweater. I said it out loud as I was watching it, as he was looking up. I thought, that's so cool. And everyone on Twitter has been like, he's like, this is the influence of Rian Johnson, because knitted sweaters became really popular after Knives Out, apparently. I don't know if that's actually true, but I think it's hilarious. And there's like one person was like, normalize sweaters in Star Wars. Like there should just be more of them. I thought it was great. Did anyone notice the sweater?
A fisherman sweater?
It is.
Yeah.
Exactly
is it like a fisherman sweater? Yeah.
I guess so. I don't guess how you describe a fisherman's sweater.
No.
Yeah.
Like that's the actual term. Rachel, you're right. Like this isn't the influence of Ryan
Thank you.
Johnson. That's a common like.
No, I know the joke about the influence of Ryan Johnson.
Okay.
It was also a joke, but
Uh,
it is. I mean, people said like there's literally been a surge in people talking about these knitted sweaters ever since Knives Out because Chris Evans wears one, like notably wears one in that movie. Anyway, that's not what the point is. I thought it was a cool sweater, and it was like cool to see
Yeah.
this like fishing community, which is what I was getting at. This fishing community, kind of portrayed in Star Wars. It's very familiar in terms of we're seeing kind of some familiar things that we know, like walkers and other sorts of stuff like that, but different enough that it feels lived in and real and true to the world. I think so. The sweater is just emblematic of that. I think
it's evocative of those things, but I don't know if it's true to the world. Like I always kind of thought Mon Calamari were like aquatic creatures. You know, I didn't imagine them living on a shore wearing sweaters. I thought they lived in the water.
Well, they do when they're on Mon Cala.
So I guess this is just a different environment, and okay, well, like
It's
fine.
just different enough, I suppose. I mean, we see them outside the water all the time, right? I mean, the most famous version of Mon Calamari was just on a ship the whole time. We never, I mean, except for in Clone Wars, we saw him as a kid. But you know, okay.
Just never picture them as fishermen.
Well, what do you think they eat?
Yeah, me neither. I guess.
Okay, so the flight control person tells them they're coming in too fast. Just as it looks like he's about to crash, he pops the landing thrusters to slow down. It looks like it's all going to go well, but one of the engines dies and topples the crest into the water, which I think is a kind of a fun subversion of expectations there. We see a repurposed / crane style walker. I don't think this is like a traditional Imperial walker that's been repurposed. It looks like it was designed for this purpose, and there's another one in the background here. You didn't like that crane? I thought that crane was really cool.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was a repurposed AT-AT.
Really?
I assumed as much, yeah.
I mean, I guess so. I guess if you're building a crane from scratch, like why would you put it on on feet? But it's Star Wars, so who knows? They put a lot of stuff on feet that don't need to be. I just thought that was a really cool touch. And then just generally, there's not a lot that happens here. It's a lot. The music's really good. Just things I enjoyed about this opening scene. The music's really good. I liked everything about the sweater guy. I really liked the top-down angle that they show as he's coming in too fast, and it's showing the blinking lights on the landing pad. We just never really see that angle before in Star Wars, and I thought that was really visually interesting. And that's it.
That's the episode, guys.
That's that opening sequence. I mean, there's not much to say there. Thoughts on the crash landing?
Obviously, a little.
I thought it was cute.
Yeah, it's a cute is a good word, a good way to put it. It's a cute comedic element, you know.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. I mean, we're kind of bearing the lead here. There's kind of one particular thing we're kind of driving to, but like I said, episode's not very long, so it shouldn't take us very long to get there. But there's some elements worth touching on before we get into it. Okay, so after he lands, Mando asks the sweater Mon Calamari guy to fix the crest. He says that he doesn't think he can fix it, but he can make it fly. He also remarks about whether he believes it can still hold fuel or not. The frog lady gets off immediately and starts looking for her husband. This is really touching. There's a lot of
so adorable.
Yeah, it's when the music swells and there's they have this they hold hands first. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
So anyway, that's kind of like the nicest moment of the whole episode. But you'll notice as you're going around that there's a lot of Mon Calamari here, and there's a lot of Quarians here as well.
Quarrens, not Quarians.
Quarians is right. That's right.
That's Mass Effect.
That's Mass Effect.
Yeah.
It's very the word is very similar. The Quarians, the first time you see them, is technically, I think, in Jabba's palace in Star Wars, but they're notably the same a species that lives on the same planet as the Mon Calamari on Mon Cala. They didn't get to name their planet after themselves, and they're often portrayed as bad guys. Yeah, most of the time.
They're the subclass.
They kind of look spookier than a Mon Calamari.
That's true.
The tentacles.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
They're the most Lovecraftian looking Star Wars creatures.
Yeah,
for sure. So I just think it's really cool, and again, there's this fishing community, so there's this like fishing aesthetic that I'm like really digging in this episode. I don't know if maybe that was just me. Okay, so the frog lady calls out. They have this little reunion. It's really nice. Mando asks the frog man to point him toward where the more Mandalorians are. He kind of just points towards the inn, and that's enough. We get a glimpse of Sasha Banks' character, Casca Reeves, hiding in a crowd. And this is the shot from the trailer that had a lot of questions about it. We were like, who is this? What's this? What's the deal with this whole thing? Turns out it was none of the things that anyone expected. It's just another Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Wearing what's obviously a Jedi robe, right?
But robes.
I know robes are robes, but it looks exactly like a Jedi robe.
So do you think they did it on purpose just to throw people off? Just for the trailer?
100%.
That shot's just for the trailer?
I don't know about that, but I think it was like a deliberate mislead.
Okay, fair enough. And they do the classic people walking by and disappear move. I don't know why. I always think that's cool looking. You can anything that's past. It could be a train, a car.
It's usually a bus, but yeah.
Yeah. It's usually a bus.
Yeah, always
I don't
a
know.
bus.
Is there a space bus in Star Wars that we can use as a reference? Okay.
If anyone's gonna know the answer to that, it's you. So
yeah, I don't know. I can't think. I'm literally running. My brain is. I'm trying to think. Is there a space bus? There's kind of those like Star Wars. There's those stormtrooper carriers that we see in season 1.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like stormtrooper buses.
Troop transport of some sort.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically that whole scene. There is a brief scene here right at the end before we cut away to the inn of a crane shot. Not like those walker cranes, but
a human crane shot.
A human crane
Crane shot.
Well, like a camera crane shot. And as it pulls up from the crowd and it shows kind of this hustling, bustling dockyard area. Again, just kind of touching on that stuff from before. I just think that this set is really, really intricate and really interesting. And it feels bigger than the space that we know it's in. I found that whole thing to be pretty good. Do you guys like the look or feel of this world that we're on, the planet or the moon of Trask?
Yeah, I did. I kind of liked. To go back to kind of what you said, I kind of liked the idea that it was like a fishing village. Like it makes sense, but it's just kind of like quirky and different. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just something a little bit different than just it being like another water planet that looks the same as all the other ones.
Another desert planet.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I liked the whole feel of this. Yeah. The opening.
They do
scenes.
a good job of making it seem like it's lived in, like it's a tangible, real world.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They go out on a boat later on in the episode, and it's
a
sailing.
Boat. It's just a boat.
It's not being powered by some sort of crazy technology.
Yeah.
It's just sailing on the water. You know.
And it's rare to see a boat in Star Wars. We almost never just see a boat. It's almost always something floating over water. But it was interesting to see an actual boat this time.
Yeah.
Weird to say that is exciting, but it's for me. I think that's exciting. Okay, so we get into the inn, and we cut to a shot of of gross like porridge type substance. We guys find out later it's chowder, but it like has a thicker
it's
a
seafood chowder.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The other live seafood chowder.
Apparently.
Yeah. Being poured into a bowl, and the best part is that's being poured into a bowl from a hose attached to the ceiling, just to really make it look gross.
It's just like it just reiterates. It's like you get one thing and one thing only in that restaurant, and it's poured through a tube into your plate.
Yeah, and I like how like
everything here has one price.
Yeah,
I like this like Mon Cala like server / employee / owner. We don't know, but like he's just like, you sit here, everyone eats, and if you eat the same thing. So like there's simple rules to follow. So he's given a table. He says that he doesn't want to buy food, but he does want to buy information. So he uses the flan, I believe is the currency, the Mon Cala flan that he earned in the first episode of the first season, to pay for this information, which he spends a lot of money on this moon very fast. Like he's just paying people off, and he's very trusting. And it's come back to bite him a couple times. And we can dive into it a little bit later. I think they do a good job of exploring kind of this dynamic later on. But he's just like so trusting with like, hey, if I pay you this, I'm going to get what I pay for. And he's just constantly not. It seems to not happen the way he's planned.
I mean, what's the alternative though in his situation? What is he supposed to do? He's got to pay people for information. That's his only option.
Yeah. You start worrying about when he's going to start running out of money, though.
I don't think that'll be a problem.
You don't think so?
No, not at all. I think they're setting it up. It's kind of, it feels like a we've said this before, like a video game. You know,
right.
he just has the currency.
Well, I mean, I guess, but like he was doing a lot of work for a long time. He was doing a lot of bounty hunting. He's saving up money.
You can justify it however you want, but as far as the show is concerned, he just has money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but it's like, it's having money or not having money is a thing in Star Wars for a long time. Luke didn't have the money to leave Tatooine. There's all these things. It's like you can't just always have cash available, especially when they make this like earning money a part of the character's thing. It's like if you're not working, where are you getting this money from? You know what I mean?
We'll see. I would love to see them address that. I don't think it'll happen though.
Okay, fair enough. We'll see. I mean, it's not either way. It's like a small thing. If it happens, good, cool. If not, whatever.
Yeah.
But he does literally pay 1,000 credits to fix his ship, and it's like not really even fixed.
It's amazing.
Okay, so he's told that this is so interesting. We mentioned this the other day about very specific language in the first episode. So when he asked this Mon Cala about others of his kind, the Mon Cala says, "Others with Beskar have been through here," which is again very specific language. Right?
Yeah.
I think we can all assume that he's in on the whole setup for Mandalorians
for sure.
here.
Like he immediately goes to like the one guy that he knows.
Yeah.
Like it's
so that we see the Mon Cala go and talk to that Corran, and that Corran approaches the table, promises take him to see the other Mandos. It just will be a few hours sail away, but he's gonna have to pay for it. So again, having to pay again. Meanwhile, Baby Yoda is having a fight with like a face hugger squid that's in his chowder. Do you think that's like they had the egg last week? Do you think this is a direct reference to the face hugger? It kind of looks like it.
It really does
Yeah.
look like it.
I
It's
mean,
the same
a
color
little
and
bit.
everything.
Yeah,
It's true.
I don't know.
The joke online was that it's like, hey, how can we make Baby Yoda cute in this episode? He doesn't have a lot to do. Give him a spoon. And that was like
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's pretty sidelined mostly in this episode.
This entire season.
Yeah.
Baby Yoda.
Yeah, he's been a side note that every once in a while they cut to him doing something cute and it's fine. But
Yeah.
I feel like that happened a lot last season. I feel like we had the same critiques last season.
Well, it's like it's a baby. It's to be like having a baby in a show and being like, ugh, why this baby's not doing anything?
No, but no. I'm sorry, but this baby has done a lot of stuff within this show. It's not like it's just an immobile nothing baby.
Sure, it has powers.
This baby has had agency throughout the entire season or first season, and most of this one is, I wish there was more Baby Yoda.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. Like, I feel like they don't need to necessarily have him like saving the day with his like big grand like gestures, but you could have him like playing around with his force abilities a little bit more. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering if maybe that's to come. I think I don't think they're
I'm sure
forgetting
it is,
about Baby
No,
Yoda
I know.
here. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of this. I mean, this is the impression that I had after finishing this episode. Is it feels like it's been a very slow burn, and like obviously they have plans, and there's these things are all going to come together later on. It's just how long are we going to let it slow burn for?
Well, yeah, that's hard to say. I think one of the things that we should note, and I don't remember if we mentioned it last week, but a lot of this season was filmed and written prior to the premiere of season 1, and you'll notice that in some of the what's it called, concept art in the credits.
Okay,
where you'll see kind of like older designs. You're like, I thought they kind of changed that already, and it's like, well, if this was being made after, in sequence as we'd seen it, that probably wouldn't reflect in the concept art, but yet we still see it like that. So I'm wondering, and we don't know yet, but there may be some course correcting, quote unquote, based off of feedback that's coming down the line, maybe next season, now that they've had a chance to say, hey, people aren't a big fan of certain episodes, or they preferred a certain length. Maybe we can start working that into this. And we see that in shows all the time.
Sure, and this is obviously a long-term play for Disney, so that would make sense.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it certainly seems like things are really going to start heating up next week.
Yes.
Right? And I would argue that this week was already pretty exciting, but
I was excited.
I'm a little biased. Okay. So we cut to the boat, and it's manned by a bunch of Corrans. Again, we mentioned the boat earlier. It's a very interesting design. We rarely see boats in Star Wars generally. This is kind of based off of a kind of a large fishing or crabbing boat style. It's got these kind of cool fins on the front that I really like. It kind of reminds me of like the water foil type sailboats you see sometimes now that are like really cool, futuristic looking. I like that. The Quarren asks if Mando has ever seen a mama core eat before. Says it's quite a sight and offers to show Baby Yoda. He's holding this massive hook while he's having this conversation this whole time.
He's a fisherman.
Huge. It's huge. Yeah. It's huge.
Fisherman's hook.
He's a fisher Quarren.
He's a that's right. He guides them in close to this cage at the bottom of the boat. There's a big bag of fish hanging over it. I got a very raptor cage-esque feel to this whole kind of sequence.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Because obviously there's the tension is rising here. It feels safe, but like they're using musical cues or cutting music here to make it feel a little bit more tense.
Right.
Anyway, as the creature comes to the surface, there's like bubbling. The Quarren's like talking about how he usually needs to be fed twice, yada yada. But he cuts it off mid sentence and then does this cool like staff kick or punch motion. I don't know what you call that. Hit motion with the staff and like hits Baby Yoda's crib into like straight into like perfectly into the mouth of this disgusting creature. And by the way,
it's called a mama core.
There's 3
mama core.
Sorry, Dan.
We just said it.
Yeah, you're right. We've now 3 for 3 for giant monsters in this season, and 3 for 3, all of them are dead.
and I say let's keep that streak going. Let's go for 9.
Let's go for all. Every episode should feature some sort of giant monster of some kind.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if there maybe I don't. You think that's a coincidence? It must be because it's like we're just gonna keep introducing these giant creatures and killing them all the time. It's like it feels like that would get old over time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Also, like they're just animals. Like it's kind of cruel to just murder them constantly.
They're acting within their nature.
Yeah.
Here's my is that boat designed for? Is this mama core in the ocean coming up through the middle of the boat?
It's implied that there's like either a cage underneath that it's held in, or it's like its own tank underneath the boat.
Yeah, I think it's in the boat. That would make the most sense.
There's a cage. So there's a cage. They have this mama core underneath.
Yeah. No, okay. I understand the physics of that. Yeah,
right.
The question is why in the fuck would they keep this creature?
We don't know. It's cultural reasons. I don't know.
A fishing boat.
I'm sure.
So they can feed it fish, Dan.
Probably so. Yeah.
Maybe mama cores have. No, we don't know this. We don't know this.
Yeah.
There could be.
Is it a murder boat or is it a fishing boat?
Well, in this case, it's both. But maybe the mama cores like produce like really delicious eggs or something. Like we don't know. There could be a reason they keep it in.
I know I'm poking holes, but like there are holes that are already kind of gaping, and that's one of them.
Literally in the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
In this case.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this creature, the mama core, eats Baby Yoda. Mando jumps in right after the child. I do want to note that his scream of "no" here is very genuine. I think that one thing this show has done really well, and both Pedro Pascal as well as the body doubles who play him when he's not voicing the character or not physically acting the character, they've done a really good job of showing Mando's attachment to Baby Yoda, despite the fact that the helmet does not let us see his face or really emote in a lot of ways. There's a couple subtle sequences. If you think back to that episode where the prison break is, where he doesn't flinch when that lady puts his knife up to his neck.
Sure.
But he does when they threaten to drop Baby Yoda. There's stuff like that I think is really subtle, but I think does a really good job of showing there's a bond there. That he always talks about. I've been quested returning this this foundling to yada yada yada, all this stuff. He talks about this in like these like kind of like flowery language, but I think it's obvious that there's a bond. There's a more of an attachment.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who wouldn't be right attached to that? Thing? Come on. Okay. So the Quarrens lock the cage back up and start stabbing at Mando with the other end of those claw poles, which apparently have like huge blades on the other end, which is pretty cool. They are apparently after the armor. Again, mention that language from before.
With a lot of credits.
Right.
Yeah.
This is apparently something that everyone wants these days. All they want is this armor. They just want this metal. It's just like the same move that the John Leguizamo character kind of did two episodes ago. They just tricking them for the armor. So Dan, based off your reaction, you're not impressed by this same kind of note here.
It's becoming clear that it's quote unquote monster of the week type show now.
Okay.
Not only in the fact that there have been 3 consecutive episodes with giant monsters that get blown up, but just like every episode is just the Mandalorian or Mando, whatever you want to call him. Like he's not actually really progressing too much on his quest. He's just being sabotaged every episode, and it's him dealing with the saboteurs every episode, and that's it. They're all self-contained episodes. I just want more of an arc. Is all that's where this all comes from. I know it. I want more of a narrative, and it's not happening thus far. Thus far, it's all superficial visual stuff.
I don't know if it's all superficial. I mean, like 90%. Again, this episode has a lot of implications for the larger world, and we'll get to that.
Yes, they do. And honestly, this episode, to be clear, was a breath of fresh air for me because it has more narrative structure and it has those plot points that are from Clone Wars up to now.
Sure, it
actually incorporates some of the larger world.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it's just Mandalorian just wandering around.
Yeah, and I think maybe they're doing that on purpose, and maybe that's why some of these episodes have been shorter. They're just kind of like, hey, this is a part of the kind of the process. Trust the process a little bit.
And I'm to a degree willing to trust it, and that's why I came to that epiphany that it is a very, very slow burn.
Right.
But it's just not satisfying.
Well, it's like maybe more satisfying as a binge if it's going to go this slow instead of a week to week type thing.
The thing with the slow burn is like you have to just pepper in pieces of the actual story to keep people engaged with the larger narrative.
Right. Okay, so we're right to get to the big reveal here. Okay, so just as it looks like he's done for, he's rescued by a group of 3 Mandalorians who fly in out of nowhere and just start blasting, just wreck these fools. There's literally a 2-legged jetpack, like assisted kick, like a full,
like a drop kick,
drop kick, and I'm pretty sure it was what's her name? Sasha Banks, who is also a wrestler. And also the cousin of Snoop Dogg for some reason.
Sweet. What do you mean for some reason?
I'm not to say that's just like one of the things people always throw in there. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool, and so obviously I'm burying the lead here, but Bo-Katan is introduced in this episode, and she's introduced right here. I recognized her as from the second she was introduced, like behind the cage with her very distinct helmet design.
Yeah, I was pumped. I was so pumped.
Oh yeah, me too. I just was like, fuck, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I recognized her like probably at least 2 seconds before you guys did.
Oh yeah, before she was even on the camera.
Yeah, I think so because I was watching with subtitles and it pops up saying Bo-Katan speaking. First.
Oh really? Okay.
Really?
All right, fair enough. That's
that spoiled.
That
don't watch it with the subtitles.
Not the first time. Not the first time.
Love it.
The second time you watch it with the subtitles. Anyway, so these guys are just wrecking dudes. There's 2 females. There's Bo-Katan. There's like Casca Reeves, and then there's the dude. There's a dude in there as well. His name is Axe Woves.
He is such a cool name.
That's a really cool name.
Your first name is Axe.
It's so badass.
Yeah.
Axe Woves, I love it.
He has apparently like wrist cannons on because he just like they do the thing where they use the grappling hook to like pull their feet from under them, and then he does have no remorse, just wrists, boom, boom. These 2 guys who are on the ground already, so badass.
I feel like it's fair because it sounds like these guys have already done this to some Mandalorians, so they're like, "Fuck these guys!" Like they just know.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a coincidence here where he just happened to fall into this trap at the same time that they caught on to the trap.
Yeah.
And so like,
Yeah. Well, I think Casca Reeves was kind of following him too, though.
Right.
That's why we saw it earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
But what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it is kind of that coincidence thing that Star Wars does, where it's just like the right people show up at the right place at the right time.
It does happen a lot. Yeah. I have this show. I give it a little bit more credit for not doing that. It doesn't introduce anybody that we know for the whole first season. Yeah. And then now that it's introducing people, it feels to me organic to what the show is.
This one does. This one doesn't seem.
Yeah, this one felt organic. Yeah.
So he lets him out of the tank. One of the things you'll notice here, I think, is really interesting, is it's a distinct parallel in the framing of the shot where she extends her hand to lift him out of the cage, as the Mandalorian who helped him out of that basement when from flashbacks. The exact same, like at least the same hand being extended, the helmet, everything. It's very intentionally done in that way, and I think you can interpret that in a lot of ways. That was him being introduced, and you could even say indoctrinated into this very specific cult not cult, maybe it's not even fair, but this sect of Mandalorian culture, and this is Bo helping him into to understand the greater Mandalorian culture, and what his place is in it. You could interpret it that way,
sure,
if you wanted to.
If you wanted to,
if you wanted to.
You want a deep dive?
Yeah, that's right. Which is, I think, why people come to this show in the first place. So
no, for sure, I think they do like kind of similar things like that, just on purpose. But
so as he's being helped up, he tells her that the creature in there has the child. Casca Reeves does not hesitate for even half a second, and she's like, "I got it," and dives into that. That's pretty cool.
It's badass.
She's a pretty cool character.
Yeah.
And I think her hair is like the braid situation she's got going there, also super cool.
I got really excited there for a second when I first heard her speak, because I was like, oh, she kind of sounds like Sabine, but she's probably not. Like for a split second, I was like,
right.
I was like, oh, is that Sabine? And I was like, oh no, it's not. I was like, her armor would be way cooler. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There was some rumors that she was Sabine. That was like a couple of things that are being tossed around. There's a lot of rumors associated with who she would be based off that image out of the trailer. But she's a new character, which I think is good. I think it's good
too. I'm glad they didn't have like everybody together immediately.
I did check to see if maybe she was a character that Bo-Katan has worked with in the past. Like if you think if you look back to like season 7 of Clone Wars, which we just saw, like when she's like scouting out Ahsoka for the first time, she's like, it's Ursa Wren, turns out she's with at that time. But there's other Mandalorians that she hangs out with. Right. I thought maybe that was someone we'd seen before. I checked around. It's not. It's a new character, which again I think ultimately good. It helps keep the galaxy from feeling small.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So she saves the child. There's a bunch of like underwater blaster fire that's really cool looking. I thought just the visual look of that was really cool. She flies back up. It turns out the little cage thing that it's not a cage. What is it? A
little egg
basket thing is dented. But he's safe.
And I mean, I want to say important to note. I don't think it's really important, but she rips it off, and the egg is no longer part of the series after this.
Yeah, I was thinking
Never
that
again?
too. Like,
well, yeah, he walks off. He's carrying the baby.
It's so busted. Yeah, they don't have it anymore. So that's kind of a thing, because that's been kind of like a safety for them.
Exactly. That was a motif of the first season. Was that?
Yeah, it was like
always close the egg.
Well,
he can hide, but
they rebuilt it too, because remember they had an original one, and then they fixed, and then what's his name? The Ugnaught. Quill. Like builds a new one. Yeah. And remember, he's like, that whole thing is like, you can see what it's like to live off the skill of your hands, and then he like builds it.
Yeah. Maybe they'll build another one. I would like to see them not.
Well, and then maybe this is another example of them using it, like you said, a visual motif to show growth. And Baby Yoda's maybe a little bit can handle himself a bit better.
Yeah.
He's super slow to walk around. I mean, like, you kind of have to carry him if you need to move at any rate of speed. That's not like the slowest possible walk, but
maybe he'll get one of those little like floaty things that Yoda had in episode 2.
Yeah. It's just a chair that floats around.
Love it.
And head height for
so
everyone
that he
else.
Can sit cross-legged and
eye
contact with everybody.
That's so funny. That scene is often referenced as being one of the ugliest scenes in all of Star Wars.
It's not good
from a visual standpoint. Like the CG is just not there. They're like in this massive, supposed to be in this massive space, but it feels and looks like shit. If any of the, I don't know, this is maybe a bold statement, but I feel like if any of the Star Wars stuff is gonna needs a quote unquote like special release or like a remaster, it's some of the prequel like special effects could use a lot of work.
Yes, they could. Yeah, just sharpen them up a little bit.
Just a little bit. Like a 4K. If you're gonna do a 4K release of like the whole saga, it's like maybe touch them up just a smidge. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's this interesting part. I said I was bearing the lead here, but Bo calls him, brother. This is a very common thing with the Mandalorian culture, the brother and sister. So, anyways, they save Mando. Mando thanks them. They save the Baby Yoda. Mando thanks them, and gives them a brief backstory of his mission. He's telling them that the Mandalorians, he's been quested to save or to give Baby Yoda to the Jedi. And as he's telling this story, the three of them take their helmets off, and he freaks out in the exact same way he did in Episode 1. When Cobb took off his helmet, and he's like, where'd you get this armor? Who are you? Just always super, just accusing them right away. Bo tells them that her armor's been in their family for 3 generations, but he, when Cobb took off his helmet, and he's like, who are you? Just always super, just accusing them right away. Bo tells them that her armor's been in their family for 3 generations, but he, when Cobb took off his helmet, and he's like, where'd you get this armor? Who are you? Just always super, just accusing them right away. Bo tells them that her armor's been in their family for He doesn't really believe it. He's like, if you don't cover your face, you're not truly Mandalorian. And then this next line might be, not the specific next line, but the line right after that, because the next line is dank ferric, which is apparently a swear word that they've been using now a couple times.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought that was a person at first. I was like, who's that? But
it
that
does
makes
sound
more
like
sense.
a Star Wars name.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Maybe it is someone's name, and then it's just turned into a swear word after a long time. I don't know.
I thought she was like referring to like a specific guy or person from like whatever another clan, but
they
gotcha.
He actually says it in this episode when they're landing, and he actually says it again when in episode 1 of season 2 when they're.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I just like that when they start building out swear words in the Star Wars Galaxy. It's just always fun to me.
Yeah.
They say that he's one of them, and she tells him that he's a member of the Children of the Watch. Now, there is a lot of questions about what the Children of the Watch actually is. It's complicated. We'll get to that in a second. There's some theories around that, but let's just talk about Bo-Katan and her introduction for a second here. Mm-hmm. So she introduced herself as Bo-Katan of Clan Kryze. Like I said, I recognize her armor right away, but I think they did a really good job of translating her armor into the live action style.
For sure.
Yeah, it was perfect.
It looks essentially perfect. Like I have no critiques.
No.
I think what's really interesting, and I think that's something that comes up in some of the behind the scenes stuff when you look at Clone Wars, is that they did a really interesting job when they were designing these CG characters for Clone Wars of taking the real live action design and trying to distill it into a more simplified CG design that is more easy to replicate. They had some challenges with certain characters, but they tried to capture the essences of certain characters and then like simplify them. So when you're going the other way and you're taking a character that was originated in a CG show, you can kind of take it back up into live action and add more detail.
Take the essences and expand on
them. Which I really like. So like her armor's more complicated. There's more pieces to it. There's kind of this like 3-line design thing that she's got going, but ultimately we knew exactly who she was, despite this is her being her first live action introduction, or if you read the subtitle, based off of like the color was perfect, like the color of the armor looked right, and like the design on the helmet was perfect. It's specific. Like I guess the helmet really matters most. Like that specific design is important. But I just thought they did a really good job of that. What did you guys think of this introduction reveal?
I really enjoyed it. I like that they didn't mess with her armor at all. They didn't change it. They didn't I don't know, because they could have, now that it's years later, so they easily could have switched things up. So I'm really glad that they didn't mess with any of the original way she looked before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly, I was so pumped about this whole scene because I was quite offended when I saw Baby Yoda getting it into that mama core.
Excuse me, what is happening?
It was offensive.
What if they just killed Baby Yoda right then?
Yeah, I was like, those dicks.
That would have been very Game of Thrones of them to do something like that.
Episode 3.
Just the audacity. But so yeah, just to see her come in and just totally kick ass was like amazing, because she's such a badass character.
She's so cool. I've always thought she's
the
really
coolest. Cool. Yeah, I love her no fear. Like she just doesn't give a shit. Like it's awesome.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about that character has always been her kind of like loyalty to Mandalore, and kind of will do anything at all costs, right? And we see a little bit of that later. We can kind of touch on it then, but she's a very I think interesting character because she's not one note. There's more to her than just that one specific thing. Yeah. And she definitely grows and changes throughout her time in the Clone Wars, which I think there's only a handful of characters that we get in Star Wars that you really get to spend a lot of time with.
Okay.
And really get to see them change and grow. I mean, Han obviously comes to, is a great example of that. And the main characters, but some of these side characters, we don't always necessarily get to see them over decades. Ahsoka's another great example where we spend a lot of time with them. So I think that is interesting. I think the one thing we should mention here is that she's being played by Katie Sackhoff, who also voiced the character in the show. And then I think not so subtly, they designed the look of their character close enough to Katie Sackhoff herself in again that simplified style that they could one day bring her into live action. And this is something I've mentioned before with the video games. as well as again the animated shows, that they're doing a lot of, when they're casting human characters in any non just live action role, they're often using the character that they're basing, like the human being that they're basing those characters on, as the visual design, so that they can be brought into, probably, I presume, so they can be brought into live action later if they need to be. That wasn't always the case. I mean, Ahsoka's obviously a great example. The rumor is that it's certainly not being played by the same actress who played her in the Clone Wars. But we don't know yet. We don't know yet who, that's still rumor, quote unquote. Obviously, there's a lot more credence to that rumor.
After
this episode.
They're already coming out with like merch that looks like Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka.
Yes, I've seen that as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's an example where they went a different route and they cast someone else. But I think a lot of the times seems like they're trying to get ahead of that and not go down that path.
Yeah.
Although they did keep that weird headband like communicator thing. I think it looks dumb in live action.
It does look dumb.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a little different and interesting, but yeah.
I mean, I feel like we just could have not. I mean, like you said, it's been years, decades potentially since the last time we saw it. We could have just not had that.
Yeah, and it's like she already wears a helmet. So what purpose does that thing serve?
I don't know.
Is it just to keep her hair back?
Maybe. I mean, and if that's the case, maybe.
It definitely has like, you can see the lights on it later. Like it has something else, but I'm assuming it's just like a communication device when she's not wearing her helmet, even. But maybe, I don't know. Yeah,
because she takes her helmet off again, which is something
that's the most important part of this scene. Actually, is that they take their helmets off and they reference this cult of like expat.
Which I'm really excited to hear more about that.
So I'm not going to read this whole thing here that I have written out, which I just basically pulled off of Wikipedia, which is kind of like the Wikipedia of Star Wars.
Love Wikipedia.
But I just want to give a brief recap of Bo-Katan's kind of history. Dan, do you want to tackle that, or do you want me to?
I can read it if you want me to.
Well, I don't know if you don't want to read the whole thing. I told you we're not going to read the whole thing.
You would know the character better than I would.
Okay. So just again, for those who maybe have not watched the Clone Wars, because I think there is a lot of people who are watching Mandalorian who have not watched the Clone Wars or Rebels. I don't think you've seen Rebels.
No.
And she plays a large part in that series as well. And I think it's important to kind of to give some context here. This is a character that obviously we have a connection to, and this is an episode that does a really good job of paying off people who have been watching Star Wars for a long time.
Yes.
But at the same time, for someone who hasn't, maybe this episode I think is still exciting. I think so.
I think that's subject to debate.
It's a short, action-packed episode. If you didn't pick up on all the nuance, I think you still enjoyed it.
No, I know, but I think all the payoff comes from knowing Star Wars. If you don't have that backstory, the episode itself is just, again, it's another one of those standalone episodes.
Absolutely.
So maybe it'll pay off later on in the season when the Darksaber comes back into the fold. But for now, for an average viewer who's not as invested into Star Wars, another throwaway episode.
Sure, and I think we've definitely given the backstory on the Darksaber. It's an important object of leadership for the Mandalorians. Was originally wielded by a Mandalorian Jedi, and there's only ever been one. So I think that's interesting. But Bo-Katan herself was introduced in Clone Wars as a lieutenant in Death Watch. Now, Death Watch is also a splinter group of the Mandalorian culture, and was so this. Here's the thing. Before we even get into this, I think it's important we address this. They introduced this concept of the Children of the Watch. There's two possible scenarios with the Children of the Watch. The Children of the Watch could mean the Children of Death Watch,
right?
Which seems to make a lot of sense, right? And you could even say that the way that Katie and Bo-Katan kind of talks about the Children of the Watch, it really feels like she's talking about it from a familiar perspective. She was a member of Death Watch, so there's that piece to it. But it also doesn't make sense which is maybe just a kind of an oversight, but I feel like they would have thought about this. So there's a problem with the timeline with the Children of the Watch. So one of them is that we know that when Din Djarin was originally saved by those Mandalorians, it was during the Clone Wars. And because we know that because of the B-2 battle droids and all that stuff. Yeah. The thing that we know about Death Watch is that they were active on Mandalore and on Concord Dawn, which is the moon of Mandalore, where they were like kind of banished to. And that Mandalore itself was neutral in the Clone Wars for most of it until the very, very end, and weren't involved in these kind of like random acts of kindness against droids around the galaxy. Like unless that planet that he saved on is Concord Dawn, which also doesn't make sense. Then there's kind of some conflict there. Like, okay, so if the children of the Watch are just children of Death Watch, then he would have been recruited by Death Watch, taken to Concord Dawn, and then would have been around at the same time. Bo-Katan was a lieutenant there, and would know who she was. Because if you remember of Death Watch, she was like a leader there. She would be known, right?
Sure.
So that doesn't really make sense. So it implies that there is another splinter group off of Death Watch that was working at the time of the Clone Wars, and was even maybe more extreme in their beliefs than Death Watch was, right? So, and maybe there's, I don't know, Dan, is there an analogy to like a kind of like a cult and then a more extreme version of a cult?
I'm sure. Certainly
There's
there
tons
are.
of those.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to say. I'm obviously not as well versed in the
Right.
Star Wars timeline as you are, but given what you just said, it doesn't make sense to me for it to have been an offshoot of the Death Watch. It seems to be
Right.
something separate.
Right, and like
yeah,
I
I would agree with that.
at first I was like, maybe it's this idea of Death Watch after having failed or whatever in Mandalore. At that time, right when we saw them fail for the first time and Maul took over, maybe it was them kind of saying, okay, well, we're outcasts now. We're going to go off and do our own thing, right? We're going to take this idea that's kind of been abandoned by the followers of Darth Maul, and we're going to go off and start our own, version of Death Watch called the Children of the Watch, or called the Watch, maybe unknown, right?
I still feel like if it was Death Watch, there would still be like, Mando himself would still have. They would have been teaching the kids, other things like, we're the right way, other Mandalorians are the wrong way.
Well, it's kind of.
It seems like that's what's been there.
It seems like that's what's been taught here, kind of.
But to him, he doesn't even know of other Mandalorians not taking off their helmets. Like that's a brand new idea to him.
Yeah.
So if they were teaching them like this is the way, like this is the way we do things, they would also be saying like, I believe if it was Death Watch, they'd also be telling him like, and they're doing it wrong. Yeah. So it's us against them.
He would know more about Mandalorian culture, about true Mandalorian culture, right?
Yeah.
If it came down, like there would be some pieces that seep through. It really feels to me that this is a sect of people with Mandalorian armor that are trying to present as Mandalorian but don't know anything about the culture.
Right.
So he's been brought up in this sort of subcult, whatever you want to call it, of people who are pseudo Mandalorians.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Right. Well, because a lot of it is there's a lot of pieces here. When you see the flashback, there are certain Mandalorians with the Vizsla clan sigil. The Vizsla clan was one who kind of started Death Watch, and there is a Vizsla played by Jon Favreau, that big like Gatling gun Mando from season 1.
No.
In that group,
that's his armor.
Oh, it could be his armor. It could be, but
I
think
what I'm saying is that's all we know is that's the armor.
It might be. I think it's confirmed that character itself is of Vizsla.
Okay, maybe not, but I think part of the whole idea, the whole concept of never taking your helmet off, is also never showing anybody else that you're not a Mandalorian underneath. Part of that cult.
Right. I mean,
those people, they just because they have the right insignia doesn't necessarily mean they're a Mandalorian underneath.
How do you explain this then? There's a lot of problems here.
They're all badasses.
So no, there's a problem a little bit too, because in season 1 he says it's like they're not a people, it's a creed, right? So that could just be a common Mandalorian thing that was just introduced in this, but it was always known. We just never talked about it. That could be true, or it's specific to this sect.
Yes.
But then Cara Dune says it at the same time as him in season 1, so that kind of explains. It seems to be that's a wider known thing, which is also confusing.
I don't remember her exact phrasing though.
Right. It seems to me like she knew, she understood it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're basically saying like you don't have to be born into it to be a Mandalorian. Like technically, like like foundlings and other, especially it's usually I assume when you're young, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be born into it to be it. It's something that you can adopt. It's not necessarily genetic.
And well, I mean, and it's certainly interesting because of this the caste system of Mandalore has this idea of like these big houses, So if you are a foundling and you maybe get to start your own quote unquote house, you'll have no
Mhm.
respect or honor or no.
It's always felt more homogenous than that to me, though. It's always felt as though that they are from the planet Mandalore.
Right.
They have Mandalorian blood. Like they're literally. In my mind, it was always not a cult or a creed. It was always a ethnicity.
Well, maybe except for if you consider this culture as being extremely warlike for a long time, and they did a lot of aggressive expansion. This is technically still extended universe,
yeah.
but
So the analogy would be like, would anybody in North Africa during the Roman Empire be a Roman?
right. Well, maybe that's not what I was going for. What I was saying is like in that time when they were extremely aggressive, and there's that like which will presumably become canon again, the Jedi Mandalorian War.
Sure.
They probably lost a lot of people. They probably a lot of
Right.
Mandalorians died. And one way, if you were trying to maintain a culture and maintain a society and make sure that you're not dying off as a people, you kind of just like you just absorb people into your
But
your
now
stuff.
you're getting into the motives of the characters, not the religion
Well, I mean, that's
itself.
how it started, maybe, right? And then it's like this idea of foundlings started this idea of to trying to recoup losses,
Sure.
and then it just became a
Right.
part of culture later. We're doing a lot of assuming here.
Right.
we-
And I
we
assume
don't
they
really
will
know.
explain it eventually. So I guess
Yeah,
we'll
and
see,
they
but-
probably will. What I'm concerned about is that they will imply that he is actually a child of Death Watch, but
Mhm.
that won't make sense unless they do a lot of legwork to make that make sense. I don't know if it will.
And yeah, unless they talk about how Death Watch like goes into hiding and like readopts the ancient ways instead.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, there's certainly ways to make it make sense, and Death
Mhm.
Watch specifically, we do know was all about going back to the ancient ways, the warring ways, where strength was important, and they wore their armor, and that was important. But Death Watch
Right.
also took their helmets off, so it's like
Yes.
you know
Yeah,
we got these kind of
exactly.
like these kind of like warring kind of ideas in place here about what and where he's from, and maybe that's on purpose. I mean, maybe they're trying to confuse us a little
Yeah,
bit so
I
that
think so.
they can
but-
reveal more information later. But Bo
Mhm.
certainly talks, again, like I said, with a lot of familiarity about what the children of the Watch are. She
Right.
specifically says, "This is the way" at the end of the episode.
a couple times.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, she knows more than she maybe is letting on here. But it
Mhm.
also could be implying that she was a member of Death Watch, and that's why she knows. But I don't know
Right.
yet. So that's that. Any questions?
No
No,
questions. Moving
I'm
on.
sure I'll have many, but
Okay.
for now we can move on.
Okay. I don't know if we have time now to go through Bo-Katan's history, but again, it's important to know we touched on a couple things. She was introduced in Clone Wars as a lieutenant in Death Watch. Oh, we didn't even put the episode on. Damn it. We put
It's
I have
going now.
Clone Wars episodes behind us with
She's in
Bo-Katan.
this episode,
Yeah.
so you can learn everything you need to know over there.
Eminence is this one, which is a very good one. It has Maul and it's very good, high quality stuff. Anyway, she was interested in Clone Wars. She was a lieutenant in Death Watch. She eventually abandons Death Watch and starts her own group called the Night Owls. That's just why she has that owl insignia on her helmet, which is another splinter group technically. She
So they
is.
have owls on Mandalore.
They've got all types of owls, Dan.
Okay, cool.
There's owls on every planet. There's an
Gotcha.
owl that follows around Ahsoka.
Makes sense.
But, anyway, so her whole thing is to kind of take after the Clone Wars is to take back Mandalore from the Imperials. She helps to do that and is gifted or is given the Darksaber to rule Mandalore. So she rules Mandalore for a very short time.
Right.
Because right when she takes over, Order 66 happens, and those really nice clone troopers that she was working with are no longer super nice, and then are now occupying Mandalore right after the Civil War.
So then those clones would have been like part of Order 66 would have been them being programmed to turn against the Mandalorians as well.
well,
the Jedi?
presumably they were given different marching
Yeah,
orders,
I guess.
right?
Mhm.
I don't know if they started murdering Mandalorians, but they might have if they were associated with the Jedi or
Sure, yeah.
whatever.
Just clarify.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of civil war on Mandalore, and this created another one. There was a house that was loyal to the Imperials. They were eventually killed again, and Bo-Katan takes over once again as the leader on Mandalore. Apparently, that doesn't last very long either because
Look where she is now.
look where she is now, and there's like a big gap of time between when we first meet her and the last time we meet her, and then also this time. Like between our last appearance of Bo-Katan in Rebels in a timeline to this one, there's like I think at least 10 years, maybe more of time in between. So anyway, maybe less than that because it's 2 BBY. Actually, I think I have the dates in here. In 2 BBY, which is 2 years before the Battle of Yavin, they use BBY as like the international code for delineating time in Star Wars. So in 2 BBY, Clan Wren resists the Empire, leading to the Imperial loyalists of Clan Saxon to fight them. These actions threw Mandalore into another civil war. During the war, Bo-Katan encountered Countess Ursa Wren and her daughter Sabine of Clan Wren, who were seeking a Mandalorian worthy of wielding the Darksaber, which had been discovered on Dathomir, Maul's homeworld, by Sabine and the crew of the Ghost. They need to find someone who's willing to claim the title of Mandalore, and this is, by the way, the title of Mandalore isn't spelled the same. It's Mandalor, which is the name of like the original person who ruled Mandalore and presumably named the planet after himself. But unclear. We don't know that yet. Anyway, with Wren's approval, Bo-Katan takes the weapon and rallies the support of several Mandalorians. Sometime after that, and there's a big gap here, the Great Purge took place. Mandalore was left devastated, and Moff Gideon had come into possession of the Darksaber. So, and that's around 9 ABY, which is after the Battle of Yavin. So there's 11 years, give or take, of time in between when we saw her and now. So anyway, that's where we stand. If you really wanted like a really in-depth breakdown, Screen Rant does a really good recap of Bo-Katan's whole deal. So you can check that out on YouTube. Okay. So I mentioned before why I think this is a big episode. We've already talked a lot around these ideas that are important, I think. And just to quickly just touch on, recap some of why I think introducing Bo-Katan into this series is important. It also makes sense. So one of them is her connection to the Darksaber. Obviously, she's intrinsically tied to that. Her connection to Death Watch, which we touched on already. Her connection to the Jedi. She's worked with Jedi a lot of times, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka notably, as well as Kanan and Ezra. Her connection to the greater Mandalorian lore, specifically the culture we've seen play out in other media, right? The more traditional, either the pacifist side or the Death Watch side, which is in, again, stark contrast to what we've seen Din Djarin learn.
In this show, yeah.
Right. And I think those elements together make it feel, like I said, very organic to include this character here, where that's maybe not always the case in Star Wars. It's kind of like who's cool or who fits. This actually does fit, I think. Do you guys have any comments or disagreement with this with me at all?
I'd be interested in understanding what you mean by organic.
Well, I mean, I guess
because those are all connections. Those are all reasons that her story connects to the script. I don't know how organic it is for her to be on that planet at the same time, just by having.
Well, I mean, they do explain it in this episode. They're gathering weapons. There's Imperials there. This is Imperial remnants. There's that kind of stuff. Black market.
I feel like I agree with all your points. I just don't think organic's the right word.
Well, maybe
because it doesn't feel like it feels like coincidence for them to be on the same planet at the same time by happenstance.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily coincidence. He is searching out other Mandalorians,
fair enough,
right?
Fair enough.
And they are, he found out that there were some there. They've been there for a while, causing Imperials problems, that kind of stuff. So,
no, the inorganic stuff is more the stuff where they just show up randomly,
right? Where to save him,
just because it's convenient.
Okay, so back to the episode. I put that in here because I knew this was going to be a big kind of like side step. So. Yeah. Bo-Katan says she was born on Mandalore and fought in the Purge and is the last of her line. Interesting that there's this kind of counterbalance thing happening here between the frog lady, and her, saving her line, and then her being the end of her line. There's a little, and they use that specific language, so you can, again, think about that how you will. She then says that Mando is a child of the Watch. We talked about that already. Skipping. Blah blah blah. Like we literally talked about this already. I've touched on all this stuff, so we kind of do it a little bit out of order.
Yeah, for sure.
Mando replies that saying there's only.
Well, he just kind of he jetpacks off because they take their helmets off, right? So he as far as he's concerned, they're not true Mandalorians. They're imposters, right? They're fakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then he just takes the child and dips out.
Yeah. There's only one way, the way of the Mandalore.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would really like to understand, like, have them flesh out like what they mean by what is the way of the Mandalorian. I think we can kind of infer a lot of things, but like, is there a specific creed that's like, is it written down somewhere, or is it only passed?
It kind of feels
know?
like if another Mandalorian says this is the way, you just have to do whatever they ask you to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much.
This is the.
yeah.
But I do like in season 1 when the armorer says, like, when he has to take, when he quests him for the first time to take baby, it's like, this is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. He's like,
damn it! She
damn it.
said those words. Those 4 words every time they get me.
And he actually mentions the creed in a little bit here. There is this one interesting thing I wanted to note, though, is that you can infer this in a couple ways. There's a look that Bo-Katan gives Baby Yoda, and it is in a moment where she's thinking or recalling this idea of the Children of the Watch, so you can kind of think about it as her kind of like just remembering something. Or you can say that, she's very familiar with the Jedi. She's worked with them before. I don't think she's ever met Yoda specifically. I don't have any recollection of that. But she may know who he was or have an idea of who Yoda was, and might understand it in that way. But there's no other hints that she does later in the episode, so that might be throwaway. I don't know.
I think it's fair to assume that she would know, or she would recognize the baby and know Yoda. Not recognize the species, obviously, but just know of Yoda.
Right, like, boy, that looks a lot like Yoda.
I would say out of any character that's
Right.
been in the show thus far, she's probably most likely to have recognized Yoda.
Right. I would agree with that. Yeah. And then there's just this gorgeous sunset shot of Mando watching as the Bo-Katan and her followers blow up the ship. It's a really nice
shot,
looking, and it's all CG. It's all fake. It's all made up. None of it's real, which is really sad. I don't like. I
mean, of course. It's
yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, you can get a gorgeous sunset shot of any coastal line, but like, this is specifically all fake. Like, I remember thinking the first season, like, wow, look what they did with like finding the perfect times, like these gorgeous like golden hour stuff. It's all fake. It's all made up. But you know what? Doesn't really matter, I guess, at the end of the day.
That's an important question, and it's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our regular podcast?
I think so. I think we could talk about for like at least 45 minutes about that.
Yeah. Wait, we're not gonna dive into that here. Yeah. Please tune into the Tower podcast where we dive into these more nerdy specific topics. Yeah. Okay. So we cut to nighttime. Mando is for some reason just walking around and is ambushed by the brother of the Quarren who tried to trick Mando. He accuses him of killing his brother. There's a bunch of them, and they're like, some of them are pulling blasters. They say they're going to kill Baby Yoda for revenge. Bo-Katan and her followers, again, just fly in out of nowhere, and they stand with Mando. She tells them that it was actually her who killed her brother, and then they proceed to murder them all. They just leave a lot of bodies behind in this episode. A lot.
They really do.
There is this badass synth score that they do.
I know, that's the best part of this goddamn episode. They do it every time the Mandalorians do something badass.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, wow.
Yeah, it's super cool.
It's so good.
And the one thing I was just thinking, I love this music. The score has been great for the whole series. There's one thing that I thought about specifically, and maybe you guys may or may not agree with me here. It does have a certain kind of feel that's similar to
Mortal
a little
Kombat?
bit. I wasn't going to say Mortal Kombat.
I was going to say Mortal Kombat.
Well, maybe Mortal Kombat, but I was thinking of kind of like that eerie music that they had playing in Season 7 on Mandalore right before Order 66. There's a very specific kind of music that they're playing there that's really creepy and it's very ominous. This is obviously amped up and kind of tweaked a little bit. I don't know if it's specifically referencing that, but it feels like it is to me.
I wouldn't know about that.
Yeah.
It does feel like Mortal Kombat to me just because it's like techno while people are fighting.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Special thanks to Skrillex for this episode.
Wow.
Rachel's just blown away by how nerdy that is. It's like, oh my god,
I'm just laughing.
Hurts me. Yeah. Okay, so we cut to the inn. They say, "Hey, let me buy you a drink." We have Grim Reaper 10 in the chat saying, "How's it going?" It's good. We're good, Grim Reaper. We're talking about Star Wars. We're always in a good mood when that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bo tells Mando that Trask is a black market port, and they're quote unquote staging weapons that have been bought and sold with the plunder of our planet. So apparently they've taken this armor, they've melted it down, and then now they're selling it or using it as currency to buy and sell weapons. Okay, makes sense. She may or may not be kind of, amping up certain bits of the story just a little bit. Maybe. Their plan is
to be convincing.
Yeah, exactly. Their plan is to steal the weapons and use them to retake Mandalore. where they will appoint a new Mandalorian, a new Mandalore. There's a lot of they use the same word a lot, so it's
yeah, they're like the Smurfs. Everything,
everything's a Smurf. Yeah, it's the Smurf, Smurfette. Everything's
my
a Smurf.
Mandalore, my Mandalore.
Then I mandoed my Mandalorians while the Mandos were Mandalorian. Anyway, so the Mandalore is the ruler again. The person who carries the dark saber.
Right.
As long as they earn it in combat, I think is the rule. Is becomes the Mandalore, the ruler of the planet, which is, I guess, also more traditional. This is this is a very old kind of way. This is not the pacifist methodology. There was a duchess at one point, which is not obviously the same. Her sister was murdered by Maul, Duchess Satine, who has a connection to Obi-Wan, and they might have a kid. There's a rumor that her nephew is actually their kid. Isn't that? Did you know that one, Rachel?
Yes, I know the
Yeah,
kid
you
that they
knew that
say
one?
is her nephew.
Yeah.
We're getting way off track here.
I'm just saying.
She's right.
That can come around. That can come around because when they say that's the end of her line, she's the end of her line. That might not be that might not be the case.
Is
That might be the
Bo-Katan part of that same line?
yeah.
Yes.
Her sister was Duchess Satine.
Oh, okay. Cool,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So where was I? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Here we go. They're gonna steal the weapons back. Mando says that Mandalore is cursed and that anyone who goes there dies. Now, this is interesting. I think it's really interesting for a couple reasons. It drives home this idea that of what Bo said earlier about religious zealots, making Mando's understanding of Mandalorian culture feel a lot more like a cult. A cult that would lie about the truth to maintain loyalty. Right. You don't want to know about what's going on in Mandalore. That's all bull. You go there, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's like the number one rule of cults is to cut you off from like everything that's actually
Your
normal.
support system,
So, yeah.
Why do you know Why do you know all the rules for cults?
Yeah, this is
I
interesting.
listen to a lot of true crime podcasts.
How do you know all the rules
so-
about cults, and why are you so convincing?
Yeah.
Also, can I join your cult?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the first things that they do is to like they get you into it and then they cut you off from like your family and your like real life.
It's all about controlling information.
Yeah.
Yes. So that makes sense if they're like a religious zealots that's what they're going to do. They're going to take these children of the watch and then they're not going to tell them anything that's actually going on in Mandalore.
There is some truth to it though, because we do know that Mandalore is a barren wasteland that was destroyed over generations of war.
Gotcha.
And Concord Dawn is in fact a half a moon because half the other moon has been blown up in a war.
How much of that is canon now?
Most of it.
Yeah.
When you visit Mandalore, they live in these like bubbled cities on the surface.
And this is just so that I'm on the same page as everybody. This is pre quote unquote purge.
Yeah. So like when we first meet Mandalorians in canon, in the Clone Wars, their planet is already a desolate wasteland. They live in these bubbled cities. That's kind of self-contained, and the reason it's like that is because, again, as a culture, they've just destroyed everything. In fact, it's so barren that in Rebels, and I know they didn't have as much of a budget as Clone Wars did, but it's so ugly. It looks like they're just standing on a white background when they're on that.
Like salt flats almost.
It's so stupid looking. It actually really bugs me. Mandalore is such a cool idea, and then the planet is ugly as hell. Yeah, you're right. It looks like white salt flats for the entire planet, and none of the mythosaurs are even alive anymore, so we can't even see those, unfortunately, as far as we know.
Which makes sense because they turned their planet into
a nuclear winter. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I do like that there's a little bit of truth based into that lie. So Mando also implies that the Empire inflicted some sort of type of additional devastation to the planet. I think there's that this idea of the Great Purge and the Night of 1,000 Tears is some sort of additional.
They stole all the babies. That's what I'm calling it now. We're gonna put it in the book. They stole all the babies.
You think that's what it is?
Yeah.
If you're gonna put it in the book, my prediction is that they actually used the Operation Sunder technology from Battlefront 2 storyline, which was this like planet destroying like technology that really turned a lot of people against the Empire as they were losing. So after the battle of where the second Death Star is destroyed, there's this kind of like scorched earth policy that the remnants of the Empire are kind of asked to inflict on these specific planets, these Imperial loyalist planets specifically. They're basically destroyed by the remnants of the Empire and were ordered to do so by these robots that had these plans enacted that had like the face of the emperor.
Okay.
It's stupid sounding. I agree.
Well, no, it's just very technical
Yeah.
sounding.
Yeah.
Here's my pitch, without knowing as much about the lore, is that Din Djarin is actually a true Mandalorian. He was taken during the Purge.
Ooh, interesting.
And the Purge was when they stole little baby Mandalorians off of that planet to train
Stormtroopers
fighters in
or
general.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that idea. It's certainly more personal of a story, right?
It's also more Disney. That's just why it's more predictable.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I'm basing mine off of like just like deep cut sci-fi Star Wars lore. Rachel, what do you think happened with the Great Purge?
I mean, to me, it sounded kind of like the Empire just went in and just had enough of the Mandalorians fucking with them and being,
Right.
because they always say that Mandalorians, they're too strong. Like they could never
to
get them
be
to do what they
controlled.
wanted.
Yeah.
So it sounded like the Empire just went in and was just like fine and just like decimated them, just complete, awful, like full blown. All their forces just went in and just pummeled them into the ground to the point where they're hiding now. So that's kind of the thing. But yeah, it could be also like taking their children and like turning them into stormtroopers, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what better way to destroy a civilization than by indoctrinating their children into your culture?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And then what happens when that culture is destroyed halfway through that process?
Who knows, right?
Yeah. So he says, anyway, I don't care about any of that stuff that you guys are doing. I don't care about Mandalore, he says. All I care about is returning Baby Yoda to the Jedi. And he specifically uses the word Jedi here and not enemy sorcerer or anything else, because I think he knew or had feeling like they would understand what that means. And Bo asks what he knows of the Jedi, which is always what people ask when people mention the Jedi. What do you know of the Jedi? And he replies that he doesn't know anything, but he hoped that they would help by creed, which is what we mentioned before, that his understanding of the Mandalorian creed is that if he asked them for help, that they're duty-bound to help him.
He should have just told them that this is the way. They would have had to do it.
Well, I mean, maybe these guys don't maybe follow those rules. It's like it's a little bit more loosey-goosey with these Mandalorians, right?
Man, it'd be like, hey man, I need to borrow $50. It is the way.
Yeah.
And they have to
Oh, damn it, he's right. It is the way.
every week, every Monday, this guy.
Oh my gosh, I
But
feel like
then you have to say, you have to pay me back. That's the way. And he's
Yeah.
like, shit, you're right.
Sorry, Rachel, what did you say?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I feel like part of their underlying creed is about younglings too, though, and it's about like, hey, like part of their way is to like bring them back to where they're supposed to go. So I don't know whether he's referencing that when he says like, if you'd help me by creed, because the creed is like we have to get this foundling back to where he belongs.
Sure.
But
the Mandalorians all look at each other knowingly, and then they agree to take him to one of the Jedi if Mando agrees to help him on their mission. He says mission, and then they cut to them all standing for some reason on the top of the Razor Crest. It's the weirdest choice, I think, of this whole episode, is them doing this planning session. It looks cool, and the lighting's good and all that stuff, but there's, for some reason, just sitting on top of the broken-ass Razor Crest here, which might be kind of one of those things like, well, we only have so many sets we can use, so we're just going to reuse this one.
I liked it. I liked the way it looked and the feel of it. It felt a little bit more casual, a little more like relaxed, but
so Bo shows them a Imperial Gazanti freighter, which is a ship we see a lot in Rebels. They've obviously built that model and then used it over and over and over again. But it was actually first seen leaving Tatooine in the Star Wars Episode 4 Special Edition release. So it's one of those like add-ons.
Yeah, of course, we all knew that. Why even mention that?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I knew that. Of course.
Yeah, everyone knew that.
Waste of everybody's time.
She says it's being loaded with weapons and scheduled to leave at first light. They are all sitting on the crest for some reason. I said that already. They can't stow away. Apparently, they scan for life forms before leaving, so the plan is to use their jetpacks to get aboard while they're still in atmosphere. The wrinkle is that apparently the freighter has to maintain a certain speed and altitude while within shipping lanes. They're hoping that this will give them time to execute their mission. They suspect that there's probably a squad of stormtroopers there. And then there's a remark about them having bad aim and can't hit the side of a bantha.
Which makes sense because they're
I laughed.
useless.
Yeah.
And I think you have to assume like the stormtroopers who are still quote unquote like with the Empire in this like Imperial Remnant era are like the ones who are like dumb enough to still kind of stick with the team. You know, they're not that great.
Yeah.
Like, but
just
then there's
following
also the
blindly.
Yeah.
And
then there's also the super loyalists, like the commanders and the
people that keep it running.
Yeah, the officers. Okay. So, this all makes perfect sense. Mando leaves Baby Yoda with the fish. Sorry, I said the fish people. They're the frog people.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm so
that's
sorry. I'm so sorry.
speciesist.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I take it back. I didn't mean it. It's just it was a slip of the finger. I typed it. I typed
I
fish people.
loved the little like talk he gave to Baby Yoda
Oh.
here. It's amazing. It's just like dad talk, like you behave.
Do you think how much do you think the frog lady knew that he was eating the eggs? Like she knew, right? Like we talked about this last week. She for sure knew.
Well,
I don't know. I feel like
It's
she would have
tough.
flipped out a lot more if she actually saw him straight
I
up
think so,
eating
right?
her like only lineage.
Well, they're
left.
unfertilized
but
eggs.
but they're
eggs.
also amphibians, which they just shoot out a bunch of eggs. Presumably
Right.
amphibians, right? With the
That's
frog
true.
and
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
They shoot out a bunch of eggs. They can't care about each and every single one.
Well, right, and
Yeah, it's
like
true.
this is there's a lot of backlash online about Baby Yoda eating these eggs. People are like really upset about it. I mean, a lot. It's all echo chamber, but what I'm saying is like people are like, guys, chillax. Do you freak out every time someone eats a chicken egg that's been
Exactly.
unfertilized?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no one does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and this is it's essentially the same idea here.
yeah.
It's similar. She
Well,
does say
no.
that it is the end of her line. So if you ate all of them, that would be a big
Well,
deal.
the analogy would be that Baby Yoda is the fox going into the chicken coop and eating
Right.
the eggs.
Yeah.
Right. Which no one
is-
likes the fox in that
Of course,
case.
yeah. The fox is the bad guy.
Anyway,
But
they,
I don't think she knew.
He drops her off, and him off, and he watches as one of the eggs hatches a tadpole, and then
Yeah.
we see there's only one tadpole. So like all those eggs, and they only fertilized them all, and only one hatched. So
Sure.
it still might
Well,
be the
maybe
end of the
it's
line.
just like
Yeah.
only one. Like it probably takes time. It's not like they're all gonna hatch at the same time.
No, I know. I'm just being a smart ass. Okay, so we cut to the mission. We see the freighter take off. I think the visual effects of this episode are really, really good. And that ship specifically looks very good. Very good. And the crew jets aboard and takes out the troopers standing on guard outside.
Cue the music again.
Oh, yeah, it's so cool. And I really like this idea of, like, people outside of the ship while it's in atmosphere for some reason. I don't know why I think that's cool, but it just has, like, a cooler feeling to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's this like the striking visual of them like jetpacking on and these stormtroopers on the side. It just, I don't know, it looks cool to me. Notice that there are handrails though.
Yeah.
Rare to see those in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So why are they there?
Outside? Well, to keep the pirates out. They've been
Yes.
right. They just haven't done a very good job of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, they lift one. The best part is they lift one up and drop one on the windshield,
Hilarious.
which is
Yeah.
great. And we cut to the cockpit, and we see Titus Welliver. This is the actor's name. And you might recognize him from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Bosch. I think he's like the lead character in Bosch.
Gone Baby
Right.
Gone. He's phenomenal in Gone Baby Gone.
He's
You should all watch that movie.
He's an amazing actor. I think this
Yeah.
is an amazing. I think this is a brilliant choice too for an Imperial officer. Like he
Yeah.
just looks like an Imperial officer, right?
He's got that
Totally
very like
works.
stoic look to his face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the rare Imperial officers that doesn't have a British accent, which I always think, which is fun.
Which makes him somehow less evil.
Well, the pilots had the British accents, so that makes up for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, so we hear the iconic Imperial alarm as like a stormtrooper comes in. It's always like that. They literally use that sound for the trailer of Rogue One.
Yeah.
It's that iconic. We cut back to the Mandos as they take out. They pick the lock and bust inside and take out 3 stormtroopers really quick. There's this really cool shot, and this is what I mean by like this really cool action directing, where these stormtroopers are running to like back up the 2 that just got dropped out of the sky.
Right.
And there's this canted camera angle, this like Dutch angle that really makes either they're conveying a couple things here, or maybe it worked for me, is that this idea that the ship is moving so that like, and they're still within atmosphere, so they're still affected by the gravity of the planet, so they're kind of running on an angle, but also it feels like more dramatic a little bit. I just really like that choice. And there's a brief firefight that makes I think this is really cool. So Bo-Katan and her Mandalorians are very calm, cool, and collected. They just do their job. They're very
pros.
synchronized. But we thought Mando looked like that before. But but next to these people, he looks like an amateur.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that he ever looked like that before, because he was always getting like knocked around. Like he was always improvising and getting roughed up.
He does
and
get shot a lot.
Yeah.
If he didn't have that armor, he'd be
like,
dead like 1,000
Well, that's
times.
the whole
Yeah.
point. Like he's
Yeah.
a knight in shining armor in that he takes all those blows, he absorbs
Right.
the blows on his armor,
Yeah.
and then still wins.
Mm-hmm.
These guys didn't look like that.
They just look super cool. And like the female Mandalorian armor doesn't have like the leg pad, like the leg armor for some reason. I don't know why.
Because they got all those dainty legs.
Dainty legs.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't say that, but
Obviously.
but anyway, the point being that like they just look really professional, right?
Yep.
And she's obviously been
Yeah.
doing this a long time. She's literally been through like 4 civil wars. So
I love that, like when they first get on the ship
Mhm.
there, and she whips that knife out on the front of her wrist and just like starts stabbing guys in the necks. I was like, it's savage. I was like, that's insane. Like,
it is. I forgot that. Is it the knife on her wrist new? I don't remember, but if it is, it's fucking
I'm not too sure.
cool. It's super
cool.
fucking cool.
yeah, she was just slicing guys up. Like I was
You
like,
disagree,
holy
Dan?
I don't disagree
crap.
at all. It just sounds like it was a bit more cathartic for Rachel.
It's just like stab, stab, stab.
She was just stabbing men, and she kept stabbing men.
Hey, stormtroopers.
a lot of yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
Stormtroopers.
sorry, my
She
bad.
did. She has a lot of like
yeah, a lot of pent up.
pent up rage against stormtroopers specifically.
It's a pandemic, okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Anyway, I just thought that and the look at them as they three of them like walk through the alley or the corridor looked really cool as well.
Yeah.
Just like a really striking image. So there's like we cut back to the cockpit and the troopers are reporting that they think there's at least 10. Which
I thought that was so funny.
Yeah. There's
At least 10, maybe more.
yeah.
And then immediately after, no, there's 4 life forms.
yeah. There's only 4 life forms. And then right as they're like, actually, they're Mandalorians, and then they're instantly killed, which is just classic stuff. You gotta love that.
Yeah.
So the captain tells the pilots to start climbing out of atmosphere, despite not being clear of the harbor zone. breaking all the rules, very classic Imperial.
You're gonna cause accidents,
Yeah, they're all about
Yeah.
rules, but they're in the remnants now. They just gotta break the rules.
They're not thinking like someone's gonna have to clean it up,
Right.
Yeah.
So the Mandalorians get caught in a hallway, but use some type of smoke / flashbang situation with their
I love
thermal
this scene.
helmet thing, and it's really cool. I just look very like Predator. Yeah, I think it's clear. Yeah.
I thought it looked really cool. I liked being able to see what they saw like through their eyes, like through their helmets. I thought that was a really neat shot.
What were you gonna say, Dan?
Just to be fair to Star Wars, actually, like that's not Predator vision. That's just thermal vision. That's what they say in Predator movies as well.
Right.
It's thermal,
Yeah.
it's thermal imagery.
But like that, when people see thermal vision,
Yeah.
they think there's a specific like style of thermal vision that makes you think of Predator.
Actually, interesting enough, when Predator takes his helmet off, he has a different type of, or it has a different type of vision.
Oh, really?
And it's represented differently in the movie. in the
Oh
first one.
yeah. Right. And this is why we bring Daniel on.
Yeah.
I just like that. It's cool that they've referenced now Predator and Alien in
Sure, yep.
in the
Same
series.
episode.
Yeah, it's true actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Okay. So the officer in the cargo hold is told to hold off the Mandos until they can clear atmosphere and jump to hyperspace, where they can rejoin the fleet. Now they reference the fleet. This is presumably, based on the timeline, the Imperial Remnant fleet that's led by Admiral Sloane at this time. Admiral Sloane does this like really vicious kind of like power play and takes control of the Imperial Remnant from these kind of like zealots. And there's like this pretty decent sized Imperial fleet that's kind of like just moving from place to place to kind of stay out of sight and stay hidden. It's presumably who they are. That fleet gets destroyed at the Battle of Jakku, when you see the remnants of that in Episode 7. So Mando and the rest of them come up through an elevator and blast their way towards the officer, who tells the troops to close all the doors. This is obviously played for laughs, I think, or as a comedic moment. He's like, close them all, close it. He's like afraid of he's clear. There's 3 of them. They start opening the door and then just get instantly killed. You know what? That's enough. I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, he's just
Tells them to close
cowering.
the
I
door.
loved it.
Yeah. I think that mileage may vary depending on how you react to that. I feel like Dan, you might be less inclined to enjoy that kind of moment in Star Wars a little bit.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, just the idea is that it's some inept Imperial officer,
right,
getting his comeuppance. I'm all for it.
There's a lot of those there's a lot of those in Star Wars. So the officer traps the Mandalorians in the cargo control area, where they use the controls to open the rear hold and send everyone flying out into the atmosphere. Love that.
Before the atmosphere.
Well, I mean, they're in atmosphere still.
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know what you meant.
Yeah. So Bo then uses the traditional communicator. This is the same communicator that I think Han has. It's just like a white tube, essentially.
Yeah.
That Han, when they like
little thumb
infiltrate.
drive,
Yeah, they infiltrate
Just looks like a pen.
It's a little bit thicker
And
than
it
a pen.
probably was
Yeah.
at first a pen or a Sharpie
Yeah.
of some sort.
Yeah. It's got that little like microphone like cross like
Yeah.
mesh thing on the top, but she
Yeah.
uses that to talk to the. I was always funny to call out those little callbacks, but
Mhm.
she uses that to talk to the bridge, and she basically tells them that oh no, they're not just here for the weapons; they've come to take the whole ship.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool change, but Mando is not impressed with the change in plans. Basically saying that you've changed the deal, you've altered the deal, and
Yep.
they best pray that she doesn't alter it again.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
This is that thing where like Mando has, through his kind of like creed, he puts a lot of faith in that people are just going to follow through with the deals that he makes. He's constantly being screwed
Yeah.
by people just like taking that for granted, or taking advantage of his trust.
Yeah, he
she's
trusts
like,
people's word a bit too much.
and like it's almost like, well, he's like, it's like the good guy always trusts people, but it's like he got to learn at some point to get a little street smarts, or like I don't know what the right answer is here, because like these are people he's supposed to quote unquote trust, but even they turn
What's
on him.
weird is like he's also not presented as the good guy. He's an outlaw. He's a mercenary, and he should have a lot of street smarts. He should be more. He should
Leery.
be less likely to
Yeah.
trust people.
Yeah.
It's a little out of character.
Well, I wonder if it's like no, because we've seen
it
this
has
a couple
to be because
times
of the
now.
armor. He's seen the armor, so he's more willing to trust them.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, the same thing happened with the dude in the first episode, and like he just seems to constantly being like, "Hey, if I pay you, you're gonna do the thing I tell you." But like, it's just doesn't seem to play out that way.
Yeah.
I don't know, and maybe it's just that he's a little bit more raw than we think. Like, yeah, he's a badass, and we know he has a past, but we don't know. Maybe he's not as world weary as we originally thought.
Could be.
It's possible. Anyway, like I said, Mando's not impressed with the change. Bo tells him that there's something she needs if she's to rule Mandalore. Obviously, she's talking about the Darksaber. And there's I'll mention it later, but there's this constant like withholding of information that each of them are doing. That if they could just tell each other everything, they could help each other a lot more, but they don't. So,
That's just
anyway,
Star Wars in general, though.
well, that's storytelling in general.
I think it's a lot of life in general.
Yeah.
You just be honest as a rule.
Yeah. Anyway, so I've lost my spot again. Okay, the Blow tells her that there's something she needs to get to rule Mandalore, and she tends to get the information from these Imperials. Mando refuses to help at first, saying that he met his end at the that he met his end of the bargain by getting them the weapons. She's decided to alter the deal. Mando better hope she doesn't alter it again. That's my any further. That's my reference to Vader. That's my reference to Vader. Yeah. So like I said before, I like this on a couple levels. One, that Mando takes his creed very seriously. Yada yada yada. The other thing that I like is that Bo is willing to do whatever it takes for her mission. So this is something we've seen from Bo-Katan before. A sentiment we've seen before in Clone Wars. Exhibit A, her being, her membership in Death Watch. Right, she believed in that cause up until her sister was murdered, basically. And she's softened over time, but she really does have a kind of like a strong drive to just accomplish her mission at all costs.
You could make the argument that she's something of a zealot herself.
Yeah, just for a different type of culture. So he cut to the captain speaking with a hollow of Moff Gideon. The captain is seeking immediate assistance. Though I love how calm he is about this whole thing. Both of them are very just like matter of fact. It's just business. It's just business. Gideon tells him that the pirates have taken too much of the ship and they won't be sending help. Gideon tells the captain that he quote unquote knows what to do. Nothing really happens after someone says you know what to do. It's never good.
No.
Which presumably means sacrifice the ship and prevent from being captured. And then he immediately murders the two pilots, and aims it towards the ground or towards the ocean. I do like this though. This is an example of some of the more extremist or fanatical viewpoints that kind of leak into the Imperial remnants that you see come into like a lot more power. With the First Order later, right. Which I think is very interesting. It makes sense too because the only people who would stay with the Empire after the Emperor is dead and the Death Star is blown up would be the most fanatical people.
Yeah, all the boys
right?
that are
Oh,
the
of
most
course,
proud.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Good one, dude. Yeah. Notice how they say "Long live the Empire" here.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, the captain shoots the pilots, attempts to crash the ship into the ocean. The Mandalorians are trapped just outside the cockpit as the ship barrels towards the ocean. A group of stormtroopers with heavy blasters are holding them back. Mando uses his armor to draw the fire and throw some thermal detonators at the troopers. I didn't love that moment. It just seemed like he kind of, I guess it makes sense. He kind of like shrinks his body into as much kind of like armor protection as he can, and then holds the thermal detonators so they can't get shot. It's not a. It's
like here's the problem with that
right.
for me.
Right.
A Mandalorian being defined as being badass shouldn't be that they can absorb a lot of damage and then eventually kill somebody, right?
Yeah, right.
Like that's to me that's not exciting. That
No.
he can just take a few licks and then crawl around and toss a grenade at people.
Right.
I always imagine Mandalorians, and I'm thinking about the other three, not him specifically, being badass enough to handle that situation without needing to do what he did.
Yeah, and then they might have, if they've taken another second before he just jumps in, might have figured something
could
out.
be, yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Right.
The scene itself was not effective in like making.
Like they could have used if I don't know if they had maybe another flashbang, because that would be another great example of great time to use one. You know, a lot of it just seemed like we didn't really need that to make the Mandalorian feel like heroic or anything. Like,
what they needed was for him to be a part of the mission, and he wasn't up to that point.
Right. I guess that's true. That's a good point. That was his one contribution. Here's the thing. His armor seems to be like particularly blaster resistant. Do you think that the armor is like that person who crafted his armor is like better at crafting Beskar than the other Mandalorians?
I would defer to Rachel and yourself on that one because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I do feel like his seems like it's stronger than others. Yeah, like you don't ever see any dents or scratches or anything on it, whereas like in other Mando armor you see that. But his is also like much newer. Like a lot of those other armors have been in people's families for generations, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I don't know, but
Yeah.
So I do feel like his does seem like it's got a little bit more strength to it than maybe some of the other ones do.
I mean, that being said, they all are just referred to as Beskar. It's not like there's any sort of distinction, right?
Well, I mean, that's like steel. I'm sure there's a bunch of different varieties of steel.
There are, absolutely.
Right? So it's like maybe that's kind of similar, right? This is like more refined or more pure in its refinement. Yeah. Okay. So the Mandalorians stop the ship from crashing while Bo-Katan interrogates the captain, demanding to know where the Darksaber is. She gets her answer, kind of, but before she can get any more information on the whereabouts of the Darksaber or Gideon, the captain used some sort of suicide pill to prevent being killed by the Moff. This is one of those, like, the bad guy's so scary that even the other bad guys kill themselves before they can, fall into the other bad guy's hands. The one example I think of when I think of this is the Daredevil.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's
the same
so
thing.
stupid. And the one in Daredevil is really dumb because he stabs his head onto a pole.
It's like, I'm not going to hit my mic, but if my mic was a pole,
yeah.
and he just smokes his forehead onto a wrought iron,
spiked fence. Iron rod. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
And it's like I don't know what was going to happen to you by the Kingpin.
You guys should watch Daredevil.
It's in the first season, I think, too.
It is.
And it's like I don't know what he expected was going to happen. Like what was the worst case scenario by Kingpin? But it couldn't have been worse than stabbing your head through a pole.
It was about his family. But either way, watch the show. Daredevil's a really good show. You guys should all watch the first season. The first
couple seasons are good. It doesn't get it's not as great in the later half, but it's fine. Get up to the point where there's the whole stuff with Punisher. That's always that stuff's really good.
Season 2 is great.
Very good stuff. Okay. Also, Dan loves the Daredevil. So just Okay.
I really do.
But I just always think whenever someone does something like this or the suicide pill, I always think of that scene. It just because it's so ridiculous. And this is crazy too. It's like this looked like it was also super painful. It's like cyanide. I don't know how painful cyanide is. Maybe pretty painful. I don't know. But this looks like his face is being electrocuted.
Yeah, he just electrocuted his brain.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're electrocuted, you don't really feel a lot. Like it's
maybe
it's probably too intense. I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that, but that's my.
There's also a big implication here that there's been Imperial officers carrying around like a cyanide tooth thing in their mouth the whole time and we didn't know. Maybe this is a new, more crazy thing post.
That's the thing. I guess they're not technically the Empire, right?
They still act like they are.
They act like they are, but they're not.
Yeah. Well, it's an empire. They just have they're just not ruling anything. They're empire with no actual empire.
But it's also not an official empire, right?
Right. I guess like it's one of those things where it's like it's as official as they want it to be within their own. Like they can make it feel as official as they want, despite
To them,
to themselves. Exactly. Okay. So I mentioned that this is where you get a really good look at the wrist knife, but that wrist knife is cool and it's very Assassin's Creed. But it just like anytime you can have a knife on a wrist is going to be cool. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's just universally interesting looking. Anyway, so what's really interesting here is that Mando and Bo have information they could both use. I said this before. She wants to know where Gideon is, which Mando could help with, right? Presumably could draw them out using Baby Yoda or some other methodology. And Mando wants to get Gideon off his back and find a Jedi, which Bo can help with, right? But neither of them reveal enough information to each other to connect the right dots, though I'm sure that will come later in the season.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
These Mandalorians are definitely going to be recurring characters.
Absolutely. There's no way that they brought them in for one episode. There's no fucking way. So then we get this really cool shot of the ship pulling up at the last moment. Again, the visuals are really cool. Bo offers Mando another chance to join them before they jump to hyperspace, but Mando says he has to finish his mission with Baby Yoda and asks where he can find the Jedi. Now, this is obviously very exciting for a lot of people, this next bit, but Bo thanks him and tells them that he can find a Jedi friend named Ahsoka Tano in the city of Caladan on the forest planet of Corvus. Both of those places are new, by the way. And to tell her that Bo-Katan sent him. Then they then make a brief exchange where Bo says this is the way. We mentioned that earlier. Relating to him, in an effort to relate to him. And again, implying that she knows a lot more about this mysterious Children of the Watch than we knew about. And like I said before, this is obviously huge news as we've been heavily rumored that Ahsoka would make an appearance in this season for the first time in live action. But it's also yet another connection to the Clone Wars and Rebels, just as a line. Filoni's obviously rubbing off here on Favreau. Favreau is the writer. Filoni's heavily involved. These types of connections are common throughout Clone Wars and Rebels. We see them a lot with Rex and Ahsoka specifically in Rebels, which makes you really feel like his presence in the show or his involvement is has a lot of influence, I think, in the direction of the show. But it's hard to know. It's hard to know for sure. I got the impression that Jon Favreau had a lot of like cool ideas about what he wanted to see happen with Mandalorian and like this cool stuff, and that Dave Filoni kind of helped him refine kind of what those specifics were and make it fit into the world. You know?
Fit into the pre-created world, puzzle pieces.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, this whole thing is exciting, obviously, and the first live action kind of utterance of the word Ahsoka Tano is interesting. It makes a lot of implications here. That it opens up a lot. It kind of makes sense that it would be Ahsoka, not just because it's Dave Filoni and his attachment to that character. But again, it also feels kind of true to the story here that she, maybe besides Obi-Wan, has the closest connection to Mandalore that we know of as a character, a Jedi character. And maybe even more than Obi-Wan, actually, in some ways, just because of her continued work with them, presumably afterwards. And we know Obi-Wan was involved with Satine early on, yada yada, but then joined the Jedi Order and didn't really go back there until much later, until the Civil War. But we also know that the show is called The Mandalorian, and it features a Baby Yoda, so it kind of makes sense that she would be one of the people we would meet here. Though you do wonder where Luke might be in all this, because he's by far the most famous Jedi at this time, right? He's like world-renowned, galaxy-renowned for helping defeat the Empire at the Battle of Yavin.
And I can't think of a better person to take a Baby Yoda
than an adult Luke.
Than an adult Luke.
Right.
yeah, right. Here's the thing. So this just popped in my brain. So okay, let's assume. I think our understanding is that Luke is right now on like this Jedi artifact finding mission. He's like off looking for stuff with the assistance of the new well, help me out here, Daniel. It's the New Republic. And he's like off doing like all these random missions. I'm pretty sure in canon.
Sure.
But he's about to start a new Jedi temple order, right? If by some means Baby Yoda is given to Luke in this show, does Baby Yoda die when Luke's Jedi temple is destroyed and it's like all of his students are basically killed? because that would be very depressing. And I can't imagine that's
It's
what they're
Disney.
doing.
I don't think they're gonna do that.
Yeah.
I can't see that happening at all.
It's more in my mind, presuming that they meet up with Ahsoka.
Right.
That Ahsoka, 'cause
Yes,
she's also
yeah.
she's not Jedi, right?
She's
She
not
left the Order.
technically
Yes.
a Jedi. That's right.
So-
Yeah, so
Having this baby Yoda train with Ahsoka in the ways of the Force from a non-Jedi, non-Sith perspective
Right.
might be like what starts the new whatever the
gray
new
Jedi?
thing is.
that
right?
that's happening in
Yeah.
the background
Yeah,
while
yeah.
Ben is arguing with his parents and all that stuff.
Yeah.
exactly.
That would be interesting. And like, yeah, I mean, Baby Yoda's so young here, right? Like, you could live for literally 1,000 years.
Yeah, but they can
practically. It's like,
break whatever rules they want with that species because Yoda and Yaddle, I guess,
Yeah.
are the only examples of that species that we have, and they're both Jedi with extreme Force powers. So they
Right.
can kind of just write that species however they want.
yeah, and they've already shown that species for some reason specifically has a lot of Force sensitivity already. I would like to know more about Yaddle. We don't all know almost anything about Yaddle.
Yeah.
Like, there's like that's like the big question mark here. It's like, well, if Yoda, it's like there's only ever one, and now we have this one, and maybe a clone. We don't know, but there's also another one that we don't really talk
No
about.
one talks about it.
No one talks about Yaddle. Whatever happened to Yaddle? How did she die? I don't know. Is she dead? Probably.
I have
She's
no
probably
idea.
dead. She almost certainly died at Order 66. Okay, so that's it. I mean, they know where they're going. They head back to the ship. The ship is in really rough shape. It's got all these weird cables attached to it, and like especially the
Fishing
cockpit.
nets.
The cockpit it doesn't make any sense. Like, why is there a fishing net on his seat? Doesn't
Like he's just holding stuff together. Like it's just like, this is how
Yeah, I
we fix things
guess.
here.
No, it's because all they have is fishing nets to repair ships.
Yeah.
Right,
There's a
okay.
fishing village.
Right.
He asked them to repair a spaceship. All they have is fishing nets.
Yeah.
No wonder that guy took this 1,000
The guy's
credits
like,
and said, "Yeah, sure."
I'll do my best,
Yeah.
bud. Like,
Well, I don't know. He makes it fly enough so he can jump back to hyperspace. Apparently, there's this weird squid thing though that like I thought this was a weird moment. Like, why even include
really
this?
was.
Right? It looks like it's like, oh, it's gonna attack Baby Yoda, and then like
Are we meant to believe that it's the same creature from the soup, from the
He-
chowder?
no, it doesn't look the same.
Well, it's a tentacle. It's like a
Maybe it is. I don't
beige
know.
Tentacle creature.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know.
maybe. But either way, it's like okay, so there's another face hugger, and then this time he catches it, and then this time Baby Yoda eats it again.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's a weird bit. I don't know.
Weird scene.
It doesn't make any. It's like, and you got to think, how much do you think that like the CG on that fucking octopus cost?
More than any of us make in a year.
Yeah, right. Just for that one moment that has no impact, but that's annoying. Anyway, they jump to hyperspace and they're off to somewhere.
No, they're off to
Corvus.
Carolan on Corvus.
Well, the next episode. So here's the thing: we're probably not going to see Ahsoka until the very end of next episode at best. More likely, we meet Ahsoka in the 5th episode of the season, which is written and directed by Dave Filoni, which would make a bit more sense.
Yeah.
The next episode is directed by Carl Weathers,
Sweet.
and will likely heavily
Interesting.
feature Carl Weathers' character, Grief Karga.
Yeah.
And what's her name?
Cara Dune.
Cara Dune. So maybe he's going back to help them, maybe help fix his ship, because, God, it's in rough shape. It needs some TLC.
Fix the ship, just get supplies,
Right.
figure out where he's going, because
Yeah.
just because she said a planet and a place
Might not
doesn't
be on
mean
a
he knows
map.
where to go.
Yeah.
Right?
mhm.
Yeah.
So that's probably what's happening next week, but we don't know for sure. What are you guys' overall thoughts on this episode? Dan, I know you liked it, but you're still a little frustrated.
No, I liked it. I liked it more than the previous 2 episodes, I guess, because it has more of that connective tissue. I'm very happy to see that we have a bit more momentum in terms
Mhm.
of where the story's going now. We have a plot point. We know Ahsoka's going to be a part of the series. Whether or not it's next episode doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
At least we have a goal, and it's a bit less vague than we have to get this baby somewhere.
Right.
Right, and then just
Right.
get ambushed along the way. So now there's momentum. Now we're getting to a place where the story's going to develop, and the characters hopefully are going to develop, because thus far that's been lacking.
Mhm.
Outside of that, it's still an enjoyable TV show. Obviously, we always every episode mention that the visuals are amazing, and
Yeah.
that's consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's what's lacking is the character development. Part of that is inhibited because he's wearing a mask the entire
Right.
time.
It seems like they're kind of hinting at that might not be the case for much longer.
Yeah, he's gonna get rid of the
Right.
mask.
He's gonna not get rid of it, but he'll at least take it off more often.
Yes, we're gonna see Pedro Pascal.
And there was some rumors that he was frustrated by the fact that he couldn't take the helmet off more. We don't know how much those things are true, because it was also that those same rumors also said that he wanted to quit the show. And it's hard to know, But
Yeah.
it seems like to me like he's kind of slowly being softened towards this idea of Mandalorians taking off their helmets or this different idea of Mandalorian culture. And the more time he spends with them, I think will probably lead to that.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Rachel, what did you think of this episode?
I mean, I think you probably know, but I was just really excited to see Bo-Katan live action. I think they did such a great job with it. And to have those new Mandalorian characters introduced as well, I appreciated them not bringing in somebody else we kind of knew. Yeah. I appreciate the new characters, and I'm really excited to see obviously where we go from here. So I'm really hoping we see Ahsoka earlier in next episode, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Like this episode, I think it's short. It's only 35 minutes long, but it's very dense. You could still probably ask for it maybe to be a smidge longer, right? To really kind of let some moments breathe a little bit more. It feels like the end of a 3-part arc. Dan, you mentioned this kind of feels like maybe this is a bit of an arc last week, and that would be kind of in line with kind of a little bit of their more storytelling style that they used in the Clone Wars and Rebels as their seasons got on. Both Clone Wars and Rebels started very much and felt very much like, Monster of the Week type episodes.
Yes.
And then they kind of brought in these larger story arcs, these 3, sometimes 4 episode story arcs that were more satisfying.
Honestly, this show would be so amazing if that were the case. If they eventually get to that point, if say Mandalorian has a season 4 or 5, and they have 3, 4, 5 episode long arcs, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're leading to here. It seems like this is kind of the end of one, and we're kind of leading into maybe another 3 episodes, and then that kind of culminates with like the whatever Ahsoka's going to do. Do you think she pops her lightsabers the first time we meet her?
I hope so.
I hope so, because they're white lightsabers, and we've never seen those in live action before, and that'd be really freaking cool.
That's true, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really interested in with Ahsoka in live action. What I'm really interested in seeing is how Rosario Dawson kind of interprets that character for live action. Right? We're so connected to this one, interpretation of the character. I think there's going to be some backlash. People are going to be, maybe a little uncomfortable with it in certain aspects. There's always going to have that, but I think largely, they'll probably get it right. But that's what's most interesting to me about that. Not even necessarily just seeing the character, but just seeing what they do with it in live action. The same reason I like Bo-Katan here. I thought they did a really great job of introducing her into live action. Felt really seamless. And it really what it does, it makes and this maybe validates is the wrong word, but it really kind of validates to me some of that work they did in Clone Wars and makes it feel a little bit more important, because those weren't shows that everyone watched, and there's a lot of interesting and cool stuff there that really built out the world, and now they're kind of bringing that in here and saying, hey, this episode is called The Heiress, right? There's this line where she's like, if I'm going to rule Mandalore, by the way, the first time she mentions their plan, she doesn't mention that she's going to be the one that rules. Yeah. By the way, note there.
Important note.
And she's driven by this, and she's the quote unquote heiress. I think that's who the titular character is here. But they don't really talk about that idea. It's like it's only touched on a little bit. Right. Again, part of the reason why you could use a couple more minutes of runtime probably to kind of flesh out some of these ideas. But I just think that's really fascinating. It takes these concepts that were built up in by some cases George Lucas himself, with aid of Dave Filoni, and kind of Dave Filoni carrying that torch and bringing these ideas into the new Disney Star Wars. It feels good. It feels good. You know what I'm saying? I really did like this episode. I think there's great action direction from Bryce Dallas Howard. This is, I thought her last episode was great too, and people are now calling for her to direct Solo too, which also makes sense because her dad directed the last one. So
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. And it didn't get a great reception. People don't know how Solo 2 is going to happen. People are suspecting it might come as a series on Disney Plus.
Makes sense.
But I would be totally down for that. Like, that would be so cool to hang out with. I thought that interpretation of Solo by Alden Ehrenreich was great. The young Mando, or Lando, not Mando. The young Lando was amazing by Donald Glover. Would love to see more of those characters, and clearly she's got the chops here to do this stuff. Sure. So that's I love that. Again, I thought exciting to see Bo-Katan. And then just mentioned before what you said, Dan, visually striking. I thought this episode looked super, super good. Probably the best episode, looking episode of the season.
I feel like we got to stop using the term visually striking. Just because if every episode can't be striking.
Well,
you know what
I
mean?
guess so, but like the introduction of
It's great.
Bo-Katan into live action is, and her
No.
live action physical look is visually striking to me.
It wasn't a commentary on the visuals.
Right.
The visuals are phenomenal. It can't be striking every episode.
Yeah, I guess that's
it's
true.
not surprising anymore. It's just always great visuals.
I guess I feel like this episode for some reason felt like another level of fidelity, but I mean, maybe I'm just kind of reading into it too much. Okay, anything else that you guys want to touch on before I close out here?
I think we covered.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and I know, Dan, this is only 35 minutes. I told you there's a lot to talk about. I told you at the top.
Sure did.
Okay, so with that all done, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, write to us at towerbabblepodcast.ca. I would love to hear what you have to say on this episode or Mandalorian in general. If you would like to help support the show, do so and head over to patreon.com/towerbabblecast for as little as $5 a month. You get to get some bonus content. Join our Discord where there's an active conversation around the Mandalorian as well as many other things. So that's a place to do that. Again, patreon.com/towerbabblecast. And if you want to keep up with everything we're doing, including when we're going live, because we do like to record these shows live, you can keep track of us on Twitch, on YouTube, on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, on most of those places except for YouTube, but you'll get there if you search it.
Just search Tower Babblecast.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, Dan. I can't change the name on YouTube, but it's basically Tower Babblecast everywhere. So again, thank you for watching, and we will be back next week with more Mandalorian, and look for more TOB content on your feed soon. We'll talk to you then. Bye.